I'm a bit self-conscious because a lot of the speakers have been quite inspiring and energising and positive in their outlook. I'm quite negative in my outlook. I'm a person who regrets going to school. I'm a person who regrets having a $20,000 debt over my head that I can't pay off and that I had to leave the country to escape. So I hope teaching will die. I believe teaching is already dead, but I don't think learning is dead at all. And all I can say to support that is looking at myself. All I have is a visual arts degree, followed by a diploma in education. I regret that. That's part of the debt. I'm certainly not contemplating a master's in education, a PhD of any type, or anything like that. I don't want another $20,000. And I don't want to have to endure rather rusty old people talking to me about things that they think are important. So instead I get a lot of my learning from my real teacher, and that's the network. I don't really know how to describe it any better than that, but in that network, as George has acknowledged, is George and many others. I haven't really counted how many people contribute to the information that I take in and help me along by giving comments to something like a statement like this, a slide like this. Just before I go any further, I'll just make, for those who've got computers on their desks, I'll let you know that these slides are available in Flickr. If you wanted to follow along, if you couldn't see them close up or something like that. Probably the best way to get this is just flickr.com/photos/Lee Blackhall. That's that URL up there. I don't know if that's very readable, but I'll go on. I'm not using the slides straight from the net because it's sometimes a little bit slow and it's bigger and clearer here anyway. So I think teaching is dead. I come from a brief background in the training sector. Firstly in New South Wales, broader then around Australia, and now I find myself with sunshine in Dunedin, New Zealand, so way down south. And always been in a role of different titles, the same thing really. I have a title of Program Developer in the Educational Development Unit. And what I find is that I'm expected to help develop new curriculum on the existing courses. But then before we can even look at that, there's a lot of staff development needed for that. So the teacher who barely knows how to use their email, believe it or not, and use a word processor, then has to somehow fathom an idea like networked learning. Well, the idea of the internet is actually a pretty good thing for learning. So it's a huge challenge. And given the speed in which things are changing, I'll have to shut down the email there. Given the speed in which things are changing, I'm a little pessimistic. I just don't think it's possible to get teachers where they're at now up to speed. However, at lunch I had the great pleasure of sitting with Greg Whitby. Am I pronouncing that name right, Greg? From the Catholic education sector in Australia. And I recorded a quick interview with him and put it up to blip.tv, and it's tagged Global Summit 06. And I got a little bit more of an encouraging feeling about the teaching potential because Greg's talking about a new layout of a school and a new type of schooling system. He was in the Sydney Morning Herald recently, sort of titled 24-Hour School. I won't go into it too much, but basically it gave me a pretty good feeling about the possibilities perhaps for the idea of teaching. And so I've kind of balanced my first slide here, long live learning. And what that relates to is that one. When the king dies, the king is dead, long live the king. Now, I've just put the king there, but we all know where that statement comes from. So I want to say that while I do think teaching is already dead, and those who don't think it's already dead, well, it's certainly dying, but it will live on in a new form. Another area of communications, painting, took on that similar line. The surrealists of Salvador Dali and Marcel Duchamp, I couldn't find a copyright-free version of Marcel, so I've just whipped one up myself, but essentially that's it. Thankfully, the Mona Lisa was copyright free, or the picture of it anyway. And so they made the statement that painting is dead, long live painting, and I think what they meant to say is painting is dead, long live art. I don't think art had a history very much beyond the beginning of the 20th century, actually. I don't think Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and all of those people saw themselves as artists. I think they saw themselves as master craftsmen and in the technique of painting. I think art is a concept that has only emerged when the tradition of painting was challenged by photography. The tradition of painting, I mean, it's obviously about a lot more, but painting portraits of well-to-do people with some sort of symbolic reference to the landscapes behind them, usually their property. Not in this case, though, which makes it quite curious. But photography disrupts that tradition. And people like Marcel Duchamp makes this painting, or this picture, and the statement, painting is dead, long live learning, and painting is dead, long live painting, and propels painting into a new era, a new form of communication, being, I guess, modern art. There is, for those, I guess there are some people in the audience who saw me last year at OzTAFE, so this is quite repetitive, actually. I feel like I'm saying the same old thing all the time, but it does go somewhere. I showed a quick video, and I may do now because I'm not sure if I'm going to go the full half an hour. But this is a 30-second video I found on archive.org. Archive.org is certainly something you should write down. Offers free and unlimited storage for all digital artefacts ever made. And it's going well down that track. So while I don't know if anyone here is contemplating spending 60, 70, 130, maybe even $1 million on digital repositories, ask yourself why you're not using a free service like Archive first off. So on that archive, they have this movie, a 30-second movie called Admiral Cigarette. It's probably not worth showing. It's only 30 seconds, and basically this character here on the left pops out of a box, shocking all the characters on our right, and then starts distributing cigarettes, and they all unfurl a banner saying, "We all smoke." The thing that's curious to me, and as the title I put, a new way of seeing with an old way of thinking, is that in 1895, I think that's about 30, maybe 40, 30 years when moving pictures through film was first demonstrated. Here it is being appropriated for the communication of an advertisement, but you can see it's quite literally theatre on a stage. So what was common amongst everybody is the understanding of theatre on a stage, and we'll communicate ideas in that way. And it took probably not until 1912 when the Russians started creating rather remarkable films using editing effects, fade-ins and fade-outs and all that sort of stuff, that the unique grammar of the film that we've very involved in now today started to emerge. That took quite a long time for people to understand a new medium and its possible impact on the way we communicate, and the inevitable impact on the way we communicate. So we compare this film to, say, a 1940s film that led the world to war in some way, to films today that get us to buy ridiculous products. It's just remarkable how far it's come, and it's even more remarkable how little we could foresee it. And so I think we are guilty of that. Well, it's not guilty. I think we're suffering from that in education, is that information and communication, from my perspective, is the core business of teaching and learning. And now we have something called information communications technology, and it just blows me away that I meet teachers all the time that don't think that has a place in the classroom. I'm face-to-face, thank you very much, and internet is not for me. Wait a minute, this is a technology that's absolutely about everything you do. And then when people, what I've worked with all the time, they take on this technology and they do what they did in the film. They put a teacher up in front of everybody here, and we make groups, private groups and forums, and we make the content available by password login only if you pay your $20,000 fee. And we conduct learning in those arenas. That's just not how it works. I put in a Google search when I need to know something, and whatever pops up, I'll go through it and I'll filter it through, or I might go into Wikipedia and find it that way. I'm certainly not paying a fee before I can access a teacher's idea of what's good content to go through a course. That's just not how I don't think learning is occurring, and it's certainly not occurring for me and most of my colleagues. So I think we're guilty of taking a new medium, a new form of communication, and just moulding it into what we're comfortable with anyway, and reinforcing our power laws and not disrupting ourselves too much and patting ourselves on the back thinking we are. Information communications technology, that's what we're all about. And I don't know, I was stewing on this slide, I like the picture especially, but information is communication, is learning, is communication, is information. And that's pretty much, what's definitely, I think, what George is speaking about, and numerous others, about that connected knowledge. Here is what I found in a Google search here last week. Here is what I found in a Yahoo search or a Wikipedia search here. And here's me in the middle, thinking about these two forms of information. One's a movie and one's a picture, and another one's hopefully no more than 200 or 300 words. I can't tolerate any more than that. And I'm thinking about that, and now, in this day and age, I have the ability to process my thinking in my blog or my pictures up on Flickr or something like that. I'm interpreting that information around me and communicating it out. And in the process, I guess, I was under the impression that Seymour was going to be here with us today, but I think he's via video link, is he? I'm really excited about that, because that's constructionism, not constructivism, constructionism. I'm constructing a meaning out of these pockets of information that I've picked up in a random way. I've made a picture here, because that's just my preference to communicate pictorially in some way. And then I've had the opportunity to communicate that out, and people come in and give me comments, and then that is the learning. And what was that? Really got to turn that off. So this picture here is a picture of, I don't know, an icon of information, a printout of a page, and an icon of communication. And that's the devices that we have here. And personally, I can't wait until this device here, the laptop, I don't have to use anymore. And somehow I can access this wonderful thing called the internet or the web by some other device. And it may be the mobile phone, but personally I hope it's some other thing. I'm looking forward to that. By the way, that slide previously, I grabbed it because it just had to go in there, but I can't think of how it was going to fit in there. But that's a 1976 printout of the Mona Lisa. The first, I think it was one of the first pictures in that old scrolling, perforated paper that you tore out of the machine, and it's just a picture of the Mona Lisa from Flickr. And I think I was going to try and articulate a notion of we're forcing again this new technology to give us something recognisable, being a printout that we can carry off and show someone, look, the computer printed this sort of thing. And what I think it relates to is a post I put on a blog quite some time ago looking at the Computer Chronicles, that TV series in the US. I wasn't aware of it until I found it in the Internet Archive. And they were talking about logo, again, a development by Seymour Papert. They had a lecturer from Stanford talking about logo and another person talking about the implications for cognitive development. What was remarkable to me, that was in 1984, they were talking about logo and how it makes, through the just basic programming, we can make geographic shapes. And it was just, geometric shapes on the screen, and they were quite amazed by it. And I don't know much about it, and I'm sure it's remarkable, but for me, filling a bag with sand and perforating it with a pin and hanging it on a string and letting it go is a far more interesting way to make geometric shapes. What, though, they missed, I think, it's just remarkable to me, they missed it. The Stanford lecturer had to use a modem to connect to his office in the university to demonstrate the logo. So they were talking about the advent when CDs come about, or portable media in which we can put content on the CDs, and all of that sort of thing, and how that would be excellent for cognitive development of different types. But they didn't talk at all about the modem, connecting them to another person or another place to get content and information. They didn't talk about the possibility of communicating through that information. I made a comic going back to my criticisms, if you call it that, or my outright just disrespect for learning management in a system of any type. The comic is, I think I call it Die LMS Die. I think if you Google search me, that's probably the most thing that comes up. I've got this preoccupation with death. And that basically sums it up for me. The lecturers, the academics, I cannot believe that they can get away with saying things like the internet doesn't have a place. I've met lecturers who say, I don't want to podcast my lectures, nobody's going to turn up to my lectures. Things like that. I can't fathom how they could say that sort of thing. And this one's trying to reinforce the idea that it's in a way, I think teachers, they're their own worst enemy. And this is meant to depict the excruciating slow pace in which we're looking at this internet, and that's what it is. I think it's called the internet pause. But there's more of a comic in there. And what I think just sparks to mind talking about the Department of Education and Training here in New South Wales, my arch enemy. Is he here? No. Darn. Because in the Sydney Morning Herald a couple of days ago, I've been, blissfully unaware of the loathsome Australian media while living in New Zealand. But arriving back here, somebody flicks me a link to the Sydney Morning Herald looking at violence on YouTube, and it was talked about here by Cappy Wood. Looking at incidences of catfights, they're called, girls fighting in schoolyards, uploading to YouTube via telephone. And the Sydney Morning Herald reporter is just jumping on this as an opportunity to slag off the internet and everything that it's evil for. And the department jumped on it and said, well, that's okay. In New South Wales, nobody can access YouTube, and we're banned mobile phones that have video on there. And that was their comment. And nowhere in the report, probably there wasn't a comment, you know how journalists are, they kind of leave out the important stuff and put the amazing stuff to them. Nowhere was there talk about, here we have real evidence of extreme violence going on in schools, recorded by school kids themselves. We're sort of preoccupied with the weirdness of a person recording a fight and uploading it, but it's tragic. It's a tragedy of our youth, and they're uploading these vicious incidences going on in schools, and we're banning it. We're banning this opportunity to get insight into our schools and the truth be known. It's just another form of abuse. So I really hope that we succeed in lifting the censorship software that we use in New South Wales Department. Every now and then they test an upgrade of their censorship software without announcing it to teachers. I've been in the situation of working with youth at risk in Blacktown, and unannounced, a new censorship filter was implemented on that day. I was just having to use Flickr and Blogger and all of the Web 2 communication to the web stuff, and it was just blocked. Being a good teacher, I suppose I should have had something up my sleeve for something like that, but I didn't. And for the first time, that class really looked to me as a representation of that institution who had censored their activities on the internet and let me have it. They showed how easy it was to get around this full-on filter. I'll just use this, and look at this, and shocking stuff. And they were outraged, and all I could do, I didn't shut down the computers and stopped. I just folded my arms and I said, porn will make you go blind. I just kept on saying that, and eventually you've got to draw a line for yourself. I was quite serious about it, and they laughed at first, but I was quite serious. Porn does make you go blind. And in the end, anyway, I think they got over it, and they sort of appreciated it, and they said, yeah, I see what you're saying, sir. And the filter, luckily, was lifted. We shouldn't call it filter. The censorship software was lifted next day, and we were able to continue uploading photos and going on with our online exhibition preparations. I jump. Networked learning is a model of learning that me and a few others are working on. Started up a Wikipedia entry on networked learning. There, it's formal. It exists, networked learning. And last night, though, I was quite nervous about here today, and I was doing some reading and rereading Ivan Illich. I just would give anything for Ivan Illich to be alive today and contactable for me in Skype. What blows me away is that when I went through teacher training in 2002, he wasn't mentioned. All of my family are teachers, even though I say all teachers are dead. And my mother and father, uncle, aunties of that generation, the baby boomers, are all aware of Ivan Illich. But all of the teachers that were trained when I went through are not aware of Ivan Illich. They're not aware of Teaching as a Subversive Activity by Weingartner and Postman, if I pronounced that right. I found that little book in the waste paper, the garbage bin of my lecturer at the front. They were throwing it out. It just kind of blew me away. So teacher training has this void of quite revolutionary, in my view, writing that the baby boomers were brought up on. Now, the baby boomers are in charge now, aren't you? And where is the reference to Ivan Illich? Ivan Illich speaks about educational web. Ivan Illich talks about all of that stuff. He envisaged something that we've got now in our hands using cassette recordings. Little cassette tapes he wanted to, he was saying that in Bolivia they spent a darn fortune on creating a television station, and they were managing to get TVs, one for every 5,000 people, I think it was, and he was arguing for the same amount of money, 5 minutes. For the same amount of money they could have distributed a cassette player to one for every 5 people, and then have left over to record everything valuable to audio for the illiterate and literate alike to listen to, and then have blank tapes as a backup and a postal system that would enable the passing of cassette tapes. Sounds like the internet to me. So I'd really like Ivan Illich to be alive, and I haven't really looked too deeply into who speaks on his behalf nowadays, and I can't wait to find somebody, because I'll certainly have them on Skype and get them to speak in. But all of this head-scratching about the internet, in my view, there's a few people we should be reading, and Ivan Illich is one, and I'm just flabbergasted that he's not included on the reading list of teacher training. So we were asked in the preparation for this presentation 4 questions, actually. I didn't have enough room in the slide to make it readable, so I put it to 3, and I think they've been digested anyway into the wiki. I wasn't aware of it when I made this slide, and I don't know if they're actually the most important questions I'd like to ask, but there they are anyway. When teaching has fallen, what will learning become? What can you do to ensure that the community have best access they can possibly have to the internet communications, as well as the values and skills to use it? Listening to Telecom yesterday. Telstra, sorry. I certainly wouldn't leave it to them. Free internet for everybody. That's what we should be demanding. Instead, we're making do with $50 a month for broadband access. $50 a month, I mean, that's just outrageous. In New Zealand, we pay about that, and we have it capped. So even if I could give my internet away via wireless for free, I can't, because I've actually got a 1 gig cap at $50 a month, and if I gave that away to the neighbourhood, well, that 1 gig would be used. I think in Australia you have unlimited broadband, so you can download as much as you want without affecting your speed and stuff. So certainly is possible for government institutions especially to subscribe to one of those and give away the internet via wireless at least, and then start giving away cheap laptops to access it. We all make mistakes. Name 3 things you as a teacher or your learning organisation is doing that is likely a mistake in terms of preparation for future learners. I'm quite curious to hear that sort of reflection. I hear a lot of patting on the back. There he is, Ivan Illich again. Deschooling Society is what I was talking about. William Ivins, Prints and Visual Communications is what leads me to this sort of looking at, and I think it's been repeated enough here already, just the evolution of different types of technology and its impact on society. And William Ivins really gives a solid look at prints and its impact on visual communication. Ken Robinson gave a great talk. Sir Ken Robinson gave a great talk at TED Talk titled Creativity. It's a great and quite inspiring one listening to. He cites creativity as the most important thing we should be learning in schools, or learning about. And Robin Sloan and Matt Thompson, Epic 2014. Seeing I've only got 5 minutes left, and I'm quite surprised I've gone the full length of time. I was going to fill up that space with that, but I guess everybody's probably seen that by now. But that's quite remarkable. Look at the future of media. Now, Yoshe. Is it Yoshe Bankler? Anybody know? Is that how you pronounce it? The Wealth of Networks is one I'm reading at the moment. It's dense, but it's certainly a good grasp on networked economies, inspired by open source and things like that. So that'd be it, I reckon. And that picture is from Iconoclasm in Wikipedia, and that's definitely what I am. And there's the teacher coming down. Yes.